That's me, Arthur Lieber.
Yes, we got you on. Hello, Mr. Lieber.
All right, a long way.
All right.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it.
I think
it was
had
on
a
my
feeling.
end. That's the mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the show. Sorry it took us so long to get you on. You know, these things happen. But hopefully you heard my slight introduction of you, talking about you being an educator, a lifelong educator. That's so important. And so let's just dive right in. Will you introduce yourself, give us a little bit about your background, and then talk about where you're running and the demographics and what you're looking at?
Okay, thanks. Arthur Lieber. I'm running in Missouri's 2nd Congressional District. Obviously, we've all heard a great deal about Ferguson, which is in Missouri's 1st District. It's about 2 or 3 miles from the 2nd District in which I'm running. My background is in education. I started off teaching in the St. Louis Public Schools. I taught in a couple of other independent schools, and then with my wife started an independent school called Crossroads School, the only non-sectarian independent school in the city of St. Louis, and was there for 15 years. And since then, I've been working with other nonprofits.
Okay. And now I read a little bit about your background on your website, and so you've been for over 4 decades. You've been an educator, and you started.
Right.
Did you mention the school that you started?
Yes, Crossroads School in St. Louis.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Civitas, which I will say, for Barbara and I, has a different ring here in North Carolina.
I guessed when I saw that, when I was reading that a few minutes ago, I'm going, oh no, who is this guy?
Right. Civitas
and
in
you
North
understand
Carolina,
why, Arthur, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? I did not know that. Well, Civitas it kind of means active citizen, and it's a nonprofit for high school and middle school students trying to, in many ways, overcome the kind of lull that school can put them in, where there's a lot of apathy and very little interest in what's going on in the world. I think as progressives, we do far better with informed citizens and ones who have a sense of caring, a sense of passion, and that's what Civitas tries to do.
Okay. Well, the reason
that's
we
great.
Yeah, it really is great when I was reading about it. But when I first saw that name, of course, in my head here in North Carolina, Civitas is it's connected with Art Pope. If you've heard of him being the Koch brother from
but I think
mother.
I should be leery from what you're saying.
No, I mean, let me just put it this way: you're using Civitas correctly. They're not.
Okay.
But
okay.
Here in North Carolina, Art Pope is basically like he's pulling the puppet strings of our Governor McCrory. He just resigned as our budget director, but Civitas is very conservative and very manipulative here in North Carolina. But I'm glad to hear you're using it in a very positive way. So I
think so. I hope we're the foil to them. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good.
Awesome. Well, I guess when I was looking at the map, I thought you were in the first it was within your district, Ferguson. But
well, we're all really one community, and you have the city of St. Louis, which is unlike virtually any other city in the country other than Baltimore, which is closer to you. In both cases, St. Louis and Baltimore are independent of the counties around them. They are counties unto themselves. But Baltimore has an advantage, I think, because Baltimore County, essentially the Baltimore County government has control over the municipalities in the county. Here in St. Louis County, we have 91 different municipalities, a lot of small ones like Ferguson.
Wow.
So they have, their own small police force, which is limited in terms of the training they get, limited in terms of the salaries that they can offer. You've probably heard that only 3 of the 53 police officers in Ferguson are African American. The officials in Ferguson say, well, they don't have the financial resources to make police work an attractive offer for African Americans. That may or may not be true, but we do know that if you've got a more efficient police department or system that you're going to have higher salaries, and I think it's just disgraceful that in 2014 that to have within an area that is nearly 70% African American to have a police force that's less than 7% African American.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's disgraceful.
Yeah, and there are some people of goodwill here, but it's been somewhat like the Keystone Cops. I mean, we've got so many jurisdictions here. I find it rather appalling that the officer who did the shooting has not been arrested. They're talking about if there would be an indictment, it would be 2 weeks out. I certainly can't justify the looting and burning, but I certainly can understand and accept the frustration of a lot of people. But it should be remembered that there are others who really are trying to handle this in a way that is responsive to a population that has been forgotten in so many ways. And I would add also that, there are many people, particularly conservatives, who want to say that race is no longer an issue in the United States. Look, we have an African-American president. But you know what? I mean, there is so much visceral dislike of this president, who I think has done a wonderful job, so much criticism of him, which is so far removed from any sense of reason, that I don't think you can look at this without a sense that there are many people who do not like him because he's African American. They may not know that that's a motivation of theirs, certainly is, and that's somewhat subtle, not so subtle as what's happening in Ferguson.
Well, I definitely agree, Arthur. People will say, well, I just don't like him. I'll say, well, what is it you don't like, and they can't give you a reason.
No.
And they say, well, he hasn't done anything. And then I pull out this list of 100 and some things that he has done and how it may have affected this person. And they're like, well, I still don't like him. And it's like, I know why you don't like him. And I've told people to their face, because you're racist, And people don't always like that. But, I mean, sometimes you have to say that,
And I'm not even sure. I mean, the term racist will put someone on the defensive. I think that the feeling of prejudice is something that a lot of people deny within themselves. And frankly, I think each and every one of us, including myself, we need to look at ourselves and we need to constantly re-examine where we are because it's kind of an insidious force within us and within the society. And whether we're talking about African Americans or if we're talking about gay people, if we're talking about women, there is certainly that tendency on the part of white males to feel that somehow we are, the chosen people, and other people gain equality because of our grace to them. We like to say we're not racist, but I don't think anyone can really say that they are. That every action they take in their life is without a racial motivation.
Absolutely. I wanted to go back to Civitas, the right Civitas that you work with, that you started, and I noticed some of the issues that you focus on with the students. It really kind of I think it relates to a potential healing in a situation like Ferguson. I think that being that close to Ferguson, the youth there maybe could be future leaders in really healing that rift. And we are not post-racial. I have to say that. I wrote a little note on Facebook about that. I'm tired of hearing people say that because people really are, for racial reasons, slamming our president. And I'm very sick of people saying that. So tell me a little bit more about Civitas and some of the actual subjects and issues that they deal with and what they're learning as they go through this.
We focus primarily on international issues, but our first meeting of this academic school year was yesterday, and we brainstormed with them ideas for this year, but we also talked about Ferguson, and I think there is a real sense of concern on their part and a sense of confusion. They're not quite sure what this is. I mean, unfortunately, I'm old enough to have, been witness to, some of the riots in the 1960s, and try to bring a little bit of that perspective into it. I think for so many young people, gay rights has happened so easily and so quickly that it's hard for them to understand why we're still dealing with a civil rights issue, why we're still dealing with women's rights. And I think that, one of the things an organization like Civitas can do is to put things in a historical perspective and say, we have cycles in this country. And when you're talking about human rights, you don't reach a level where you've won the battle. You only reach a level where you're winning the battle at that point. But if you let up, a lot of people are going to be in trouble. And we try to, help our students be aware of the fact that when you're passive, then in a lot of ways you're becoming part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of that and issues, I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about your stance on a lot of the issues, because you touched on women's rights, you touched on gay rights and civil rights. What are some of the keystone issues in your campaign for Missouri 2nd?
Well, I think the fundamental issue is, and it's something I believe that Barbara was talking about before, is when you don't have competition for various races, you're just falling over and letting the Republicans take control. I'm running the 2nd District in part because no one else wanted to do it. They didn't think it was a winnable district. I think it is. And I'm doing it in a different way. I'm not asking for a lot of money. I'm asking for donations of only $10.10. That would be the president's proposed new federal minimum wage. I want to walk the walk as well as talking the talk about campaign finance reform.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so, I've gotten some very good response to that. We've got a very active campaign through our website, through Facebook, through Twitter. It's going to take more than that. Perhaps the most frustrating part of it is that most of the local media doesn't really want to report about this clear contrast. I mean, my opponent, Ann Wagner, who I've never met, and she may be a wonderful woman, but she has over $3 million in her campaign coffers, and she is reluctant to meet with citizens. She tends to support the status quo, certainly Wall Street. I'm trying to talk about the needs not only of middle class, which a lot of Democrats will say, but especially in light of Ferguson, we need to talk about those who live in poverty. And, I think when you help the poor in the country, then you're going to help the middle class. As JFK would say, a rising tide lifts all ships. So a couple of key things to me, is campaign finance reform, and with our economy, making a full employment economy the core of an economic approach. In other words, we want to have more investment, and we want to have more exports, and we want people to have more spending power. But basically, if you don't have a job, you've got a problem. And if it means in some cases that we slow down automation, if it means in some cases we focus more on domestic production rather than international production, I think we need to do it. I don't want any more Willy Lomans than necessary. I want people to be able to come home at night and feel good about the job they have.
Right. Wonderful. Barbara.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am here. I am fascinated by this $10.10. I think that's awesome. I have a brother who's big in politics out in Minnesota. He is a Republican, and when I asked him for some help on something, just for some ideas, he said, ask for $10, because that's, can you forego 2 meals at McDonald's or, a fast food place? He said $10 is actually a good amount to ask people for, because they will fork over $10. So I think that is good. And our little group, Pet V, will be sending you $10.10. You can be assured of that.
I appreciate it.
We have a little political action committee, and so we will be getting that out to you this week, because I just think that's awesome.
At least once.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. No, it can only be once. But I do appreciate that, and I think, with all the tremendous sums of money in politics now, there's an irony to it because it costs less and less at this point to run a campaign. I mean, what you need are voters who are interested in seeking out information. If they do so, you can go on the web and you'll get a lot of distorted information. But if a candidate is willing to put down what he or she really thinks, and if all the candidates in a particular race are willing to do that, it almost costs the voter nothing, to access that information. Now, unfortunately, most information is distorted, and that is geometrically, made worse by what happens on radio and television with their advertising. But, I love the idea. I would just love to win this race with a very low budget campaign, and okay.
No. Carry on.
I think that's great.
Oh, no. Okay. No, I was just affirming you.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Getting back to schools, your idea that we should have a lifetime of learning, that is something that I strongly believe in. I think it's Chris Matthews who says, I get up every day and I want to learn something new today. And a lot of people look at you like, what? You just don't want to sit in front of the TV all day? And I say, well, no, that's just not me. I think that brand of, ideology about learning should be really, so much more so that we can continue to be the great nation, because if we don't encourage our kids to learn, we're going to end up having not a very good nation, is what I'm saying. So what's your take on that? Tell us more about getting others to learn.
Well, I wrote a book called Standardized Education, Testing America's Best. And I so agree with you about the idea of waking up in the morning and just wanting to learn, what's happening right now, what lays ahead in the future. And I think we have just done horrible damage to our educational system in a number of ways. Standardized testing means that everybody, to one extent or another, has to learn the same way. I think, we all remember how terribly boring much of school was, and how unpleasant it was to have to take tests all the time and to write long papers about books you didn't read, things like that, and so the school is always on your case for what you didn't do or what you didn't do right, rather than, providing opportunities for you to love learning and just to explore new vistas and to get positive feedback for what you're doing. I think that years ago, teachers who, to a certain extent, were able to have pretty much control of what their curriculum would be and what they would do in class, I think that they were able to relate in some ways in a much more healthy fashion to students than a lot of teachers are now, who have gone through these robotic courses and then have their lessons prescribed for them. So I'd really like to see education humanized, and I think humanization of anything that is involved in the development of our youth is going to humanize our body politic and humanize our nation. I find school policy to be, extremely political, and it troubles me a lot when Democrats talk, we just want to put more money into our schools, because if they're going to be, run in such a non-creative way, I don't think additional money is particularly good.
That's a good point.
That's very true.
I wanted to say, when I said amen, apologize my southernness.
No problem.
I was just cheering you on. Yeah, so
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was absolutely just affirming you. No, I think that's a great point about that, and I think that one of the things we lack in modern society, and I think this is what you're touching on, is the ability to critically think. I think
right.
that's the core of what we should teach people. Is the ability to think for themselves, to gather information and facts, and to process it themselves. And
I agree with you.
I mean, I think that. Go ahead. please.
So I don't think you can have standardized tests on critical thinking. I think critical thinking in a lot of ways, goes back to what was said before. If you wake up in the morning and, once you have to figure out, well, what can I do today? What are my options? And, how am I going to do what I really want to do? That all involves critical thinking, and there's a certain sense of empowerment. Now, I'm not talking about, completely open schools and things like that, but what I am talking about is, we've done a lot, presumably to empower teachers. I don't know if we've been that successful with that. I think we need to do more to empower students, to let students have more of a say in their own education.
Absolutely. And another thought just popped in my head. I mean, when you are going for a PhD, you have to defend your dissertation.
Right.
How could is there a way we could incorporate that sort of aspect to schools where you've got at least 2 or 3 teachers of a similar subject? Could they gather together and like hear students sort of maybe for 5 minutes even sort of defend a point they made about what they've learned for that year as a part of the aspect? Sure.
I think that would be terrific, especially if it's done in somewhat of a collegial fashion, that it's not, what we want to do even in this process is to learn from one another rather than, have a great power imbalance.
Yeah. Well, We're tight on time. I wanted to give you a chance to promote your giving of folks give you 1010. I think that's a wonderful idea, and to also another thing they can do is what Barry, Robin, Crystal, and the rest of them do for us is they can tweet for you, tweet or get on Facebook or send emails out, or could they even make phone calls for you? How can they help you get out?
Well, I'm not doing phone calls because, again, I just think being on the receiving end of them a lot of the time, I don't particularly appreciate that. But the tweeting and the Facebook, and I know Joanne and Crystal have been doing a wonderful job in Missouri and others throughout the country, and it's very exciting to have progressives pulling together. And not being bullied by conservatives.
Right. And so how can they connect with you? I think I posted the website, but what is your website?
Yeah, it's Lieber for Congress, and it's LIEBER, and the word for spelled out FOR, Congress, CONGRESS.com. Okay. And there's a lot in there, I think, about issues, and one of the things I'm doing now during the congressional recess is on a day-by-day basis describing what I would be doing during the recess as opposed to, going around trying to raise money above $3 million. Because
nice.
For me, it's kind of what we were talking about before. It's a learning experience. And if it ever stops being a learning experience, then I don't think you should be in Congress.
That's a good point.
Very good point.
Awesome.
I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. It's been a pleasure speaking with both of you.
You're very welcome, and as I said before, I really do want to get all 3 of you back on and give you more time, because I intended to give you much more time than this. So will you agree to come back on?
Absolutely, and I apologize. Okay. I think the audio problem was on my end.
Okay, well, these things happen. Like I said, our friend Marshall, half the time, he'd have himself muted, and he will have talked for like 5 minutes and not realize it. So I didn't know if it was that or some other like telephone problem, but technology fails us sometimes, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But we do want you to get back on here, and so I'm glad you're coming back.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much.
Great talking to you.
Good talking with you.
Likewise. Okay,
Bye.
Bye.